Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. We've got a great guest today, and I love this. When we have a recruit that's actually out of state, we've got a running back, I think one of the top running backs in the country in Louisiana, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, University High School, U-High as they call it, Brian Beck Jr., who's going to be a class of 222 senior running back, who's currently with his dad in Oregon on a visit to Oregon State. Brian Beck, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Man, it's pretty cool that you're calling us all the way from Oregon and people are going to hear this. You're going to be able to tell your story, right?
Yeah, we're already out here in Oregon. We went on a great journey. We're on a couple trips. Went to a SMU camp in Dallas. Then we flew over here to UNLV in Las Vegas, and then Sacramento. And now we're over here in Oregon, in Corvallis, on a visit at Oregon State, which is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and you went to Sac State, huh? Sacramento State, which is pretty neat.
Yes, sir.
UNLV, the Running Rebels. We got to mention that. I remember Jared Turkanian, your dad remembers that in the old days. Basketball. And SMU, Southern Methodist in Dallas, Texas, and now Corvallis, Oregon State, which has a great program. And man, how do you feel, man? How you still got a lot of energy to do more of these?
Oh, yes. We're looking forward to the future, both unofficial and official visits that I'm going to be taking. Hopefully, we can push back the official visits till during the school year and get a whole bunch of unofficial visits going in, so I can see a whole bunch of campuses all around the country, the different programs, and the different opportunities different campuses have waiting for me. Yeah,
and I want to mention this. I'm going to brag on you. Class of 222, we got Brian Beck Jr. on, University High running back. He's going to be a senior this coming year. He's 6 foot tall, 203 pounds. I've seen Brian play. I saw his junior year, and he was really good. And he came on late and looked as good as any running back I saw last year in Louisiana. And he's running a 4.5 40 at camps and 4.56 at all the June camps, which is smoking, but for 203 pounds, right, Brian? That's smoking for a guy 203 pounds.
Yes, sir. That's what the coaches are telling me.
And you got a 3-point. Go ahead.
I don't know. My goal is to hopefully by the end of the summer break into the 4.4s. Wow.
I tell you what, not many people can run 4.4 over 190 pounds. I mean, you're 203 now.
Yeah, my dad's pretty fast, so hopefully I can get as fast as him.
I know. And look, you got a 3.6 GPA. You're a great student. You got a 24 ACT. Your goal is to get a 31. You bench over 300 pounds. Your goal is 330 pounds. You squat 350. Your goal is 425. You power clean 350. You still got a goal to get up to that. That's a lot already, by the way. But I want to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break. And, Brian, when we come back, we're going to talk more about you, University High School, your teammates this coming season. I'm going to brag on you some more. But also, when we come back, I want to talk about your dad. Your dad's got an athletic background. And talk about your journey, how you got to Louisiana, because you're not from Louisiana, and it's really neat that your family's from the West Coast and settled in Baton Rouge where you're playing at University High. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. Our guest is Brian Beck Jr., I think one of the top running backs in the country for the class of 222 at University High. He also is with another D1 running back, teammate Derrick Graham, who, between you and Derrick, Brian, this has got to be one of the best tandems in the state and maybe in the country going into this coming season, don't you think?
Yes, sir. I think this season it's just going to be running the ball, splitting carries. We're gonna be causing some havoc this season. You know, Derrick, he's a very big back. You know, he's one of the biggest backs I've ever seen. He's strong, he's huge, runs people over clean, and I think we're going to be a great duo, like one of the most unstoppable duos probably in Baton Rouge history.
Yeah, I mean, he's 215. You're 203. He is 5'11". You're 6 foot. I mean, it's not like y'all are both 5'8", 9". There's nothing wrong with that, but y'all are big guys that can run. And I want to go ahead and mention a couple of sponsors before we get back to Brian. We want to mention Medine's Collision Center in Baton Rouge on Kincaid Avenue. Thanks for sponsoring the show so we can do the show. The number to call is 357-7983, area code 225. The Medine family, locally owned. Also, John Harvey Toyota out of Shreveport, Bossier City. We've got a big listening audience in Shreveport, Bossier, Brian, in Natchitoches, and also Alexandria and Monroe, Louisiana, West Monroe. Be sure to check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Brian, talk about your dad and your family. I mean, the journey to Louisiana and Baton Rouge. Tell everybody where your mom and dad are from and how neat it is to see you settle in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, so our journey was pretty long. So my dad's from California, originally Sacramento, and we got to see family out here. My mom is from Oregon, and they met in high school.
Wow.
In Oregon, yeah, they met in high school. I was born in Maryland. My older sister was born in Michigan, actually.
Okay.
But they moved and had me, and then they also had my two younger siblings in Maryland, and then we ended up moving out to Cali for a bit, for 2 years, I think it was, yeah. My dad got a job out in Cali, and then we were out there mainly just to, be around family, trying to get a family dynamic going.
Yeah.
And then some new job opportunities brought my dad to Ohio, where we were living in Cleveland.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah, and that's when I first started playing football. I didn't start playing football till 6th grade.
Okay.
In Cali and Maryland was when I was playing lacrosse. Lacrosse is really a big sport over there. It's not so big in Louisiana.
Right.
And then in 8th grade is when we moved to Louisiana, and that started my whole journey of going to Dutchtown, then going to U High, and everything like that. And football started picking up, and here I am today, taking visits to places like Oregon State.
Look, tell everybody about playing football in these other states. What's the difference to you playing football in Ohio, Maryland, Cali, and now Louisiana? What's the difference between Louisiana to you and these other states when it comes to football?
So other states does not nearly have the competition that Louisiana has. Like, in my opinion, week in and week out, the South in general, but specifically Louisiana, you're playing top-tier players. When I was playing in Ohio, I would look up, a couple of high schools would have, like, maybe one or two good players, like maybe a 3-star here. Like, I'm looking at just on my team, we got a couple 4-star, 5-star athletes just on U High's team alone.
Right.
I'm going against teams that have multiple D1 scholarship athletes, multiple 5-star athletes that are just so much better than the kids in other states,
Yeah, I mean, people would love to hear what you're just saying. I mean, because you lived in these other states, you experienced it. Tell everybody about how great of an athlete your dad was back in the day.
Oh, so I actually got to hear about my dad when we went to his Hall of Fame induction. All his friends were telling me what he was doing in high school and college, and I heard a whole bunch of stories. But I actually heard that he was the fastest person on the Oregon State football team when he was playing.
Wow.
And one time he actually got challenged that he couldn't catch a train, and he went and go mid-practice, left practice, to go catch a train, jump on it, and then jump right back off before he could. And he got in trouble by the coaches for that because he just left practice to go do it. But
yeah.
He was the fastest person on the field at all times. Field corner, led the state of California in interceptions. I mean, I've heard some pretty big stories about this man right here.
Well, and I wish that it had video like they do now on phones back in the day when your dad was doing it. They could have videoed it, right? That back in the old days. And I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, there's no way I'd be like 5 football fields from catching a train. And for him to do that, incredible, man. That's something you see in the movies, right?
Yeah, I've heard some crazy stories about him. He is very fast and very really physical for his size. Like, it was actually scary hearing the thing. Like, he was benching 325 in high school, and he was a corner. So I couldn't imagine some of the receivers he was going against, like him just grabbing them, and they couldn't even get away from him.
Yeah, and you're bigger than your dad was at this age.
I
right?
know. I'm way bigger than my dad, and he's over here lifting more than me. I'm like.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Brian, I want to talk to Brian Beck some more. Brian Beck Jr., the same name as his dad, Brian Beck Sr., who's in the Hall of Fame growing up and on the West Coast and played at Oregon State. And talk to Brian. I'm going to ask Brian about his U-High teammates and what he thinks U-High can do this coming year. And we'll talk more about some of his top players on his team. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of good football players at U-High. This team's going to rival the team about 3 years ago that won it all with talent. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Sports Scout Report. We'll be back with more Brian Beck Jr., University High School. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest is Brian Beck Jr., running back, class of 222 from University High in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Brian, there's a lot of talent on this team coming back at U-High. A lot of guys with experience. I'm gonna throw a bunch of names out. I'm just going to go through them. Jeremiah Vessel, receiver DB. Roman Petrie, a big DB, DN. I mean, he's 6'5". Gavin Jones, big O lineman, about 6'6", 284. Eden Stagg, a transfer receiver, a great player from Southside in Youngsville. William Bankston, a long snapper. Miller Leach, I think, got D1 talent, too, on the O-line. Came over from St. Louis High School in Lake Charles because of the Hurricanes, stayed at U-High. Runs a 5'2", 40 at 6'2", 291. Austin Osbury, very good player, senior DB receiver. Jason Barnes, receiver, a little guy, but, man, he's tough, 5'5", 150. Brian Beck, who's with us today, 6 foot, 203, 205, might even play at 210 this year. Justin Collins, great DB. Derrick Graham, we talked about his running mate, a senior running back. Christian Granger, another good offensive lineman, a big kid, about 290, 6'5". Joe Hayden, a big O lineman, another senior, 308 in weight, 6 foot. Nick Williams, a big-time D-tackle, DN. It's a senior. I think he's a big-time D1 D-tackle. Dylan Smith, a safety, plays bigger than his size. The young Osbury, we'll talk about the junior Osbury, who's got a chance to be better than Austin, his senior brother. And Joseph Hudo and Jabari Johnson. I mean, what a group, huh? Brian, this is a heck of a group of guys coming back.
Yeah, we got a lot of kids, a lot of my friends that are going to be playing throughout the season, getting multiple offers. We're going to have scouts in the stands because hopefully this whole COVID thing's going to be over by the season. So hopefully we're going to have tons of scouts in the stands come give offers almost every game. I got friends, Austin Osbury. That is probably the fastest man I've ever ran against. Like, every day at practice,
really,
he makes me faster. He makes me faster every single day.
And he's 200. He's 200 pounds too.
Yeah, and he is a very, very big corner. So he's gonna be locking down him and JV. JV was just a shutdown corner for us last year, and is hopefully going to do the same this year and next year. I think the real highlight though is going to be the line, the offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Miller. Miller Leach is a huge guy to have on the offensive line, and he hits every single play.
He takes people down after the play. He goes after people.
Yeah, it seems like every play he's trying to end someone's life on the field. Right. He is just a monster. But our whole entire line, we got Joe, Preston, Gavin. Our whole entire line, 280 plus. So we got a solid O line to be running behind. Me and Derrick are gonna have some big plays popping off this season. Yeah,
Granger's a big guy, 290. I mean, Gavin's 6'7", 285, and Miller Leach 291, 6'2". This whole O-line, like you said, this is a special line. I really believe this, Brian. I think you and Derrick could each go over 1,500 yards this year. Don't you agree?
Oh, easy. I think that's really scraping it because we're going to be running the ball a lot this year. We got 2 top-tier running backs, and we got that big O-line. So, I mean, we're gonna Eden Stagg's going to be out there catching some deep balls, but I think we're really going to focus on the run game more, and then that run game is going to open up the opportunities for the pass game.
What do you think of Jason Barnes? He's the smallest guy on the team, but he's just tough as nails, isn't he? 5'5", can really go.
I think people really overlook him because every time he gets the ball in his hands, it's a 30 yards. It's a 30-yard play. Like he's making people fall left and right, and it's like people think he's small, but you can't tackle him. You get your hands around him, he's wiggling out of your hands. He's a real slippery runner. So when he gets the ball out in that slot, I think he's a crazy player. I think he can be a big-time player and could potentially play in the next level. People overlook him because of his size, but I think he really overcomes that burden he has.
And what do you think of Nick Williams? I watched Nick too. I watched you, Nick, Miller, Osbury brothers, all these guys. But Nick Williams, I think, could be a Power 5 signee. He's got some good stuff. He could be a DN at 275, 280.
Nick Williams is a scary man. I say that. He is going to be our nose guard this year, and he is going to be putting in work like every single play. You got to double team. Like last year, I don't think there was a play he went without being double teamed last year.
Wow.
So I think he's going to be huge impact. Getting other D linemen free and getting sacks. Regardless of the double and triple teams he's going to be taking on. He's got a couple offers rolling in, and this year, after the first couple weeks, he should have some big time Power 5 offers coming in.
Brian, tell me, what do you like most about going to your visit to Oregon State? What's been the highlight of the road trip for you?
The highlight of my road trip was actually seeing my dad. Seeing my dad go on the tour with me.
Yeah.
He played here at Oregon State, and he was always like, "Nah, I don't want to go play at Oregon State. You're not going to play there." But he came here, and he was like, "This is an amazing school. This school is amazing. It's brand new." He took me to go see his fraternity house, everything. It was a great visit, and it was a great experience for both of us.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Your dad's listening to this. We're going to get your dad on the next segment, too, to talk about what it's like as a parent. But I've watched Oregon State play football for 30 years, and I think they're the toughest football program in the Pac-12. I think they just bring it. Like, when you do beat Oregon State, you're going to be hurting for a couple of weeks. And I've always enjoyed watching them play because they're just so tough, and they're one of the tougher teams, I think, in the Pac-12.
Yeah. We actually watched a little pump-up video. They took us into the team meeting room, and they rolled down the projector, and we watched that, and it was just full of big hits and running backs running down. And they actually have a history of really good running backs, like really big, bruising running backs. And I think that's what makes this school so cool. Like, that's what makes the school an option for me. You know what I mean? My dad played here. They've got a history of running backs, and I think this would be a beautiful school to come to.
And you know what I like about Oregon State? All those Cali guys that go there were looked over by USC, UCLA. They got a chip on their shoulder. So every time they play UCLA, USC, your dad knows that. They just want to take them out. So
Yeah. USC is like the USC and like Cal Berkeley. All those schools are like kind of like the popular schools, like the popular kids in school. And then Oregon State is kind of that one kid that just doesn't get enough. You know what I mean? Like that gets overlooked, all that stuff. They just come popping out, banging people, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like Oregon State does play with a chip on their shoulder, and Oregon State is that school that you can never underestimate.
Ask the LSU fans 18, 20 years ago. Oregon State came to LSU and almost beat LSU. If they wouldn't have missed some extra points, your dad remembers that game. They would have beat LSU in Tiger Stadium. It was about 20 years ago. They were super huge and big and quick and mean. But we're going to take a break, Brian, and when we come back, I want to get your dad on the line and ask him about what it's like to be the dad on the trip, and what is it like to go through this, being a former player and be with you, and what is this shaping out for? What is it like to still do this and accompany his son, you being a junior, Brian Beck Jr. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get your dad to come on the phone and talk about what it's like to be a dad of a recruit now. We'll be right back. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report. This segment, we want to get Brian Beck Jr.'s dad on the phone and see if we can talk to him about what it's like traveling, getting to go to his old alma mater on the visit, Oregon State. Brian Beck Sr., man, how's it going? How's Oregon?
Man, it is amazing. It's amazing being back. It was wonderful just to see the awesome improvements to the facility, just the approach that they have with their student athletes, which I think is similar, maybe at some other top tier universities, but just the special care that they take in the conversations, even having spoken with the coaches at each of the camps, just seeing how intense they're so intentional about what they're looking for, to really develop a good family that can stand the test of time in the face of adversity on that field. We have
Brian Beck Sr. on that played football at Oregon State. His son, Brian Beck Jr., is a running back at U-High, class of 222, 6 foot, 203 pounds, can run a 4.56, 4.5 in the 40. Brian, UNLV, you and your son went to UNLV in Nevada. I think that's a sleeping giant college. What do you think of UNLV? I think they're so close to being a great school because they've got great facilities. You got Bishop Norman High School down the street. It produces some of the best in the country. But what do you think of UNLV? That would be a great place possibly, for your son.
I'm going to give it to you. Absolutely, right? I mean, I think they're on the verge of cutting the corners and turning the edge. I mean, you're talking about a program that just sunk over $40 million into their football program. Their program is amazing. They understand the work that needs to be done, and they're putting in that work, and they're putting the investment there. I mean, hey, they play their games they play their games where the Las Vegas Raiders play.
Raiders, yeah.
And that was a $200 million facility. It is phenomenal. Just the opportunity they gave us to walk around and see the improvements that they made and talk to really what their vision was inspiring. I'm very blessed. I have a teammate that works in the executive office for the team as well, Coach Ian Shields, and the coaching staff, and they've just been absolutely great. They opened up another session, and we were able to get into it at the last minute. So, I mean, we've been basically touring the West Coast right now, and then all the backside of this month and July will be dedicated to the southern states.
What has it been like for you, Brian Beck Sr.? I mean, your son is traveling. Your son's going to be a senior next year at U-High as a running back, and now that y'all live in Baton Rouge, what is it like for you to get to spend some time with your son on the road and be a part of this?
It's actually amazing, right? I mean, I remember me going through it. It wasn't like this when I grew up. I didn't have that dad that was doing these types of things and going with me to practices and focusing on the little things. I'm blessed that I actually coached. I coached college football after playing spring football, arena football, little Canadian stuff. So it's been a blessing to just be a part of this process and really help him to remain focused on the main thing. We know that there's a reason why you call a student athlete. And I didn't get this when I went. I went just for football. I mean, he's got a great GPA. He's got dual enrollment credits. Wherever he goes and graduates, Brian right now is done with all of his college math if he was to do business management or lower. And so the focus is always to be a student first, to be a positive contributor to your team, to be a community member that brings nothing but positive light. And so I think he's got that, but really hitting that home, right? College is about the next 40 to 50 years of your life. Right? It's about that program, the brotherhood that you establish, but even beyond that, the network for your advancement for tomorrow. So that you can be one step closer to not having to make the journey that I did.
You know what?
It's been great.
You know what? I got to ask you this. And this is not my strength, lacrosse. What do you think? How good is he in lacrosse? I hear he's pretty good in lacrosse too.
So, and I'm not saying this from a dad's perspective. I'm saying from a coaching perspective. Anywhere that my son has went, he has been completely dominant. My son made the all-star, all-SEC team, varsity starter for lacrosse from Louisiana all the way up through Florida as a true freshman. Because of his ability with lateral movement, Brian obviously plays both offense and defense. So he attacks every time at running back like he attacks at strong safety. It's the same difference in lacrosse because Brian can pretty much shut down any number one shooter because of his hip movements, his rotation, and his quick twitch left and right. So they can't get away from him, and he's a big force. So to be able to move at the speed he moves and to have good lateral movement and speed, I mean, he only wears a size 11. So he's got good feet in the drilling. So he's actually extremely talented and competitive lacrosse player. It's just he's nasty on the field within the rules. And I think, in lacrosse, he's very dominant.
I never said this on the air, but I lived in Pennsylvania, Brian. I lived in Philadelphia for a year, and I was building tennis courts. And I was dating someone who went to Penn State. She was an All-American lacrosse player at Penn State. And I had a chance to watch Penn State play another team. I think it was North Carolina in lacrosse, and that was 1990. And, Brian, I got to admit, I didn't even know what lacrosse was until I went to this event. Never seen it before.
Few people do. I mean, when you think about it, Native Americans, it was their sport, and they used to use it to settle battles. Then you fast forward, and people don't know this, but I want to say it was Jim Brown at Syracuse was an All-American lacrosse player and an All-American football player and went into the NFL. When you look at the East Coast, even the NFL, what you'll find is there are players, I want to say the team is the New England Patriots, have actually recruited lacrosse players that never set foot on a football field in college. And they were starting receivers in the NFL and played in Super Bowls. So the talent, when you think about it, you think about the quick pitch left and right movement that you get. You think about the hand-eye coordination in the game of lacrosse. It's very fast, it's very intense, and it's quick moving. So it's very easily translatable into very skilled positions. And I think that's what gives Brian really an edge. He's got very long wind. For his size, you would think he gets tired. Brian is used to playing midi, long stick midi, long stick defender, depending on what they need. So the back and forth running helps him tremendously in the game of football, and he's still carrying the same type of weight.
I want to mention this. We're going to take one more break, and Brian, I want you to come back and talk to us one more segment. Brian Sr., the father of Brian Beck Jr., running back at U-High, class of 222. I want to ask you, I want to tell you, give you my thoughts outside of a dad's opinion of your son, because I was watching film this past year, watching Miller Leach and that O-line block, and I was doing some films. I was doing films on Miller and watching this whole group, and your son caught my eye late this past season. I want to share that story with the public when we come back. We'll be right back with more of Brian Beck Sr. His son is one of the top running back prospects in the country, I think, for class of 222 at U-High in Baton Rouge. We'll be right back.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, Girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest, we've had Brian Beck Jr. on, one of the top recruits in the country, and his dad, Brian Beck Sr., who played at Oregon State football. A little tidbit, UNLV, we were talking about it earlier, Brian, but he one of the most famous players I remember to go to UNLV was Randall Cunningham, quarterback.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Randall Cunningham was a phenomenal quarterback in, the 80s with the Eagles, early 90s. He was pretty good in his day, wasn't he?
Yeah. And they've got some phenomenal players that come out of Vegas, right, when they improve that program and with the focus they're doing. I think they'll keep. Oregon State has a great player. Jackson, I think he just got inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He was from Las Vegas, got recruited out to Oregon State, was an All-American, and then got drafted top round to the NFL, did multiple years, and now is in the Hall of Fame. Imagine what happens when you can keep some of your own people in your backyard.
You know what I just thought of? And I wanted to tell you this. You already know this, but I just thought of this. Two dads that played at Oregon State, their kids have been at U-High. Reggie Tongue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Micaiah Tongue, and then you and your son. So I just thought of that. But do you know Reggie Tongue that played at Oregon State?
Yeah. So Reggie was a redshirt freshman during my final senior year. We were talking about him. I believe Reggie Young was probably one of the best athletes to ever come out of Oregon State. Obviously, you have Brandon Cook and some others. And Micaiah just entered the transfer portal this last season out of Georgia, and he is now at Oregon State University. Brian actually has some pictures in front of his locker during the visit.
Wow.
And it says Micaiah Tongue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So small world. I'll tell you, LSU Lab does put out some amazing players. You got standout players playing linebacker at the University of Alabama, doing great things in his second year. You got another standout player at Arizona State, a team that Brian Jr. is working with as well. We're hoping that we'll have that unofficial visit and tour in about 2 to 3 weeks there as well, and he'll be able to reconnect with some of his past teammates there as well.
I want to mention this. I was watching film before I even met Brian Beck Sr., and this is before I talked to your son back in March to interview him for recruiting. But I remember watching to get a bunch of film. I was watching a bunch of games this past year, and I noticed a young man come in the game late in the season, and your son started running the ball. I knew who Derrick Graham was, and then I see this other back come in. I had to look for the number, and I said, this guy's a stud. He can run outside. He's got speed. He's big. He's got a burst. He can run over people. He can run around them, and that was your son, Brian Beck Jr. And late this past year, he really, really took off and caught my eye to the point that I'm like, this guy has yet to even show half of his ability yet. His senior year, this is the year to do some phenomenal things, right, Brian?
Absolutely, I agree. I think I think the coaches realize really what they have, and it's a testament when you think about the fact that you have two all-district running backs. Derrick was the first team all-district running back last year. Brian Jr. was honored with being chosen to the second team all-district. I think people have yet to see, just his ability to catch. And I think between him and Derrick, with the coaching talent they have, I think that these two running backs are going to be a matchup nightmare, because you're talking about two running backs that can take strong safeties. And I'll be honest with you, I think with Brian's hands, height, weight, and speed, in the right route, Brian's going to be able to take cornerback. So I think that, depending on the type of scheme the offense runs, they can make it a complete matchup nightmare. You're going to talk about combo coverage and things like that, which is going to open up the run for the other running back, and vice versa.
I want to share a story with you and I want to tell you who your son reminds me a little bit of. When I watched Livonia High School about 6 years ago, I went to a game and I saw a guy by the name of Patrick Queen run the ball. And Patrick Queen was about 6 foot tall, about 210 pounds, ran a 4.5. And all he played was running back, mostly at Livonia. And you know who Patrick Queen is.
Yes, sir.
So he's a first-round pick years later for the Ravens out of LSU. He moves to linebacker, gets up to 230 pounds, runs now a 4.45 in the 40, benches 500 pounds, one of the NFL Rookie of the Year rookies on defense. Your son is so athletic that schools might want him to be an outside linebacker because they can't find guys that run 4.5 at 215, 220.
I agree all day long, right? I tell you, the one thing that, and it's interesting because Brian and I talk about it, and he's not wed to anything. I think the diverse training regimen that he's on with his life coaches and his personal trainers is that Brian just become the best athlete with the God-given talents he's been given. So when you're thinking about dropping in the coverage, he can do it. He can play man-to-man coverage. He understands the bump-and-run technique. He understands he's got good hips for the opening. He knows how to weave and drop his bottom because we go through all those drills. I was a cornerback, so I believe knowing how to run backwards as long as you can is the best way to win the game, right? So I train him in that, and he's got coaches to do that. And then running back is just a natural thing. So I believe he can play on any side of the ball, be an impact player for anyone, definitely be a positive contributor to the team, the culture of their school. And when you think about fast forward in the future, here's a young man in 11th grade that already knows he wants to be an astrophysicist or an astrophysicist theorist or counter theorist.
Wow.
So those things are amazing. I don't know what half that is, but hey, I looked it up. It's pretty intense. So when you think about high-level engineering, NASA, things like that, I mean, man, what a great young man to have a part of your program. I want to add this because he said something. As a dad, I get selfish, right? I kind of wanted Brian close to me wherever I was on the front of this journey. So I was something, I don't want you at Oregon State. And I didn't want you on the West Coast, But as I looked at being more unselfish and I looked at his abilities and I looked at the schemes on different teams, I think he'd be great in the SEC for sure. I think he'd be great for anybody's program. I think he's a great fit, obviously, in the West Coast type of offenses and defenses, that are running those 4-3, 4-4 defenses, doing wonderful schemes with a talented kid like that. But when I go to Oregon State, when I see Oregon State, I'm just selfishly wed to them. I'd love it if there was an opportunity for him to be here, but I'll be happy if my son just gets the opportunity to do what he loves.
Yeah,
have a great experience.
It's all about getting to play too. Getting to get on the field. Yes, 2 more questions. One more. I want to get your thoughts on this young senior. I say young, experienced senior line coming back at U-High. What are your thoughts on this O-line at U-High? Miller, Leach, Granger, this whole big Joe Haendale. Gavin Jones. It's a big O-line coming back at U-High. A really good O-line.
Well, you've got more than just a big O-line. You have a talented, athletic O-line that can move. You've got offensive tackles with wingspans that people try to break the corner at D-in, or you have a linebacker coming off the corner that once they extend those arms, there's no lane. Quarterback just steps up in the pocket, and they're opening holes because they're fast with good feet. They're swinging their butt. And that's all these 2 running backs need is an ounce of life because they're not going to get tackled by arm tackles at all. Yeah. So I think I'm very excited about the talent that's on that line and what we're going to be able to see this year. I think we're going to have some big plays, some exciting big runs because you get these guys matched up with that secondary or with that linebacking crew. I think it's going to be a nightmare for them small fellas. And I'm speaking from experience because I used to be one. So I know what it was like having to take on some of these big backs. But I was a face hunter, so.
There you go. And I think Granger and Miller Leach are 2 sleeper D1 linemen. These 2 guys are tough. They're really tough guys.
Absolutely. I tell you, I've seen a lot with Miller. And he comes to the sideline. He's gritty. He's grinding. And when you talk about somebody that puts in the work in the weight room, you're talking about 2-a-days. I know because he's been to the house and worked out with Brian. And, they put in those 2-a-days. When everybody else in the country is done with their workout, these kids are out still working. And that's the sign of a child that's committed to excellence on and off the field.
Here's the final question. It's a Pac-12 question because I know you're from the West Coast. Who is the greatest football player that you've ever seen put on pads on the West Coast? Is there one person that sticks out to you?
Ronnie Lott.
Who?
Ronnie Lott.
Ronnie Lott. Oh, man, he was so tough. Oh, wow.
Ronnie Lott. I mean, FC was the powerhouse when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so those are the kids I've seen. And I tell you what, Ronnie Lott, man, day in, day out. Rules were a little different. But, I mean, when you see film of him just in practice, I couldn't even. Now, my favorite player all time is Lester Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
the Raiders.
That's my guy. Yes, sir.
Played at Texas A&M. Played at Texas A&M.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He would knock your head off as a corner. He's 6'3", big guy, about 210.
Yes, sir.
And what people don't realize is Ronnie Lott never saw 5'11", but he would hit you like he was 6'12". He was incredible. Ronnie Lott would put the fear in a giant. I mean, Ronnie Lott was one of my favorites. I remember when they came to LSU in Tiger Stadium in 1979. Ronnie Lott was starting on the USC team, Brian, against LSU, and they beat LSU by, I think, a field goal or a touchdown. They had Paul McDonald, Charles White, Brad Budd. Those are some great ones, huh? And then Ronnie Lott was on that team. Ronnie Lott was just, when he would hit you, your whole helmet would break. I mean, this guy was incredible. But, Brian, look, safe journey back. You and your son, Brian Beck Jr., I know that you're going to go on some more trips, and I'm glad we could do this to promote him all over the country and all over Louisiana. And I'm real excited. It's really fun to bring the dad and the son on a journey of traveling all these cities all over the country.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll close with this, man. The coaches at these events are great. They do give you time, and I think it's great to see the evolution of this process, especially dealing with coming out of COVID, the new transfer portal. That makes things tougher, I'm quite sure, on these universities, but like Cal, man, they've been wonderful. Yale's been wonderful. So it's just been awesome and to enjoy this experience.
I'm ready for football.
Arizona State, yeah.
Brian, I'm ready for the tee to be kicked off, man. I'm ready for football in August. I'm ready.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, well, you guys
You don't remember it until you're sick.
That's right. And look, guys, be safe getting back. I know that y'all are still in Oregon as we speak. Y'all are actually in Corvallis right now doing this interview at Oregon State, calling us from Oregon State's campus over there in Oregon. But look,
yes,
don't hang up. We're going to end the show. Everybody go to lafootballmagazine.com. We've got a big preview on U-High with all the kids we mentioned, including Brian Beck Jr., that you're going to love. But go to our website. If you're listening to the show, lafootballmagazine.com. It'll be out in late August. It'll be every school previewed in the state, every college in Louisiana. We're the recruiting section. Be sure to go to our website. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.